Daily Telegram.
All right. We interrupt our conversation about Marcus's groceries to bring you the latest edition of the Temple Daily Telegram High School Football Podcast.
Are we sure we're done with that, though? I'd like to know what kind of groceries.
Maybe just cereal.
Okay, well, milk.
Oh, geez.
Oh, it's going to be okay.
And a bowl.
I got a few laying around the house. I might have to, use some of that detergent I bought to, clean them out every once in a while, but...
Cool. Well, guess what, everybody? We have reached week 10 of Class 1A through 4A football and week 6 for 6A and TAPS. We're coming up on the last Friday of October. It's cold outside. It's dark outside. Because it's nighttime right now. That's,
It's
usually happens.
Generally how it works.
Right.
I'll take the cold weather, though.
Yeah. It's been kind of neat.
Yep.
Fun. District 94A2 was Salado, Gerald, Gatesville, and other teams playing their last week of football of the regular season this week. Others, second to last week. And meanwhile, Temple and Belton are 2-0 and 12-6A. Off to good starts there. We'll get into a bunch of stuff, as always. But first, Marcus.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hi. Marcus
Hi.
Hood is over there, and I forgot about Daniel Zepeda. He's over there.
Hello.
He carried that groceries conversation
I do what I can.
at the beginning. Marcus, let us know how our teams that we covered did last week.
Most certainly. Temple, another win, 44-7 over Bryan last week. Belton, 26-14 over Coppers Cove. The other scores from that district, Harker Heights beat Killeen Ellison 35-34, close ball game there. Killeen Shoemaker beat Killeen 45-24. Lampasas, that was a tight battle with Austin LBG for a while. What did I say? LBJ for a while, but Lampasas pulled out 36-18. Salado shut out Gerald 47-0. Waco Conley beat Gatesville 56-21. Troy snuck by Caldwell 21-6. Rockdale beats Academy 44-13. Lorena upsets Yo. I don't know if you can call it an upset, but they beat Cameron Yo 28-20. Rogers defeated Riesel 59-13. Bruce Valetti over Moody 49-19. Holland defeated Rosebud Lot 56-6. Snook defeated Bartlett 50-6. Granger defeated Burton 18-12. Dimebox over Buckholz 64-37. Central Texas Christian School 49. Marble Falls Junior Varsity 0. Lucas Christian Academy 62. Holy Trinity Catholic 46. And then a game that was played on Wednesday night. Somerville just beat Bartlett 34-12.
Yeah, Bartlett having to play a couple games within a 5-day span,
Correct.
6-day span.
Yep, that's why they've been listed on here twice. Losing to Snook and losing to
Yep.
Somerville. Yeah, so.
All right. So that was last week. This week, another busy schedule for our local teams. Temple has the Thursday night game this week in 12-6A, playing against Harker Heights at Leo Buckley Stadium in Killeen. Belton is at Bryan on Friday night. In 9-4A Division II, Gerald is at Gatesville, and that game is for the final playoff spot in that district.
I believe that's correct.
Yes. And Robinson is at Salado. The Eagles looking to close out a district championship. An outright district championship. They already have the share. In 11-3A1, Cameron Yo is at McGregor. That's a must-win for the Yeomen. And Rockdale is at Troy. That's a big game, basically for the outright district lead, or part of the, possibly the outright district lead, depending on what Lorena does against Caldwell. In 12-2A1, Holland is at Bruce Valetti. Moody at Thrall. 13-2A2, Granger at Snook. 14-1A2, Buckholz is at Oglesby. in TAP 6-man. District 4, Division 2, Holy Trinity Catholic at San Marcos Academy. In non-district, San Antonio Davenport at Lake Belton. That's a rematch of a really good game earlier this year. Davenport beat Lake Belton 42-35, and that's the Broncos' lone loss. They haven't lost since that game, actually.
They have not.
That one's going to be a Friday night game at Belton High's. Yeah, Tiger Field. So that should be a good one. And also in non-district, Central Texas Christian is at Austin St. Dominic Savio. Idle this week, Academy, Rogers, and Rosebud Lott. A lot of good stuff, as expected, late in the season.
Yep.
Just real quick, I guess we'll start with Temple since it does have a Thursday game this week playing against Harker Heights, and that's a team, Daniel. I don't know, you might feel this way as well. Is kind of under the radar at 3-2 and 1-1 in district. One of those teams that can sneak up on an opponent any given week.
Yeah, I'd agree.
The Knights lost their district opener at Bryan 28-21, but when I was talking with Temple coach Scott Stewart this week, he said there's no reason to kind of compare common opponents when it comes to Temple's opponent this week, because Temple beat Bryan pretty handily 44-7 last week. Because Stewart said Harker Heights is very dangerous on offense, and he's right. I was looking up their stats, and they're averaging about 480 yards per game on offense.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of caught me by surprise. Their quarterback, Sean West, is 68 of 120 this year. He's got a couple really good receivers. Marcus Maple already has 408 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. Terrence Carter, who played some quarterback last year, has 22 catches for 314 yards. And then they got a sophomore running back who's already up to 512 yards.
Through what, 5 games?
Through 5 games,
yeah,
yep.
So that's...
Yeah, so Temple's defense, which has been just on a tear lately, holding district opponents to 14 points a game and holding opponents overall to a little bit lower than that, 13.4, I believe, this season, coming off a game where they allowed only 149 yards to Bryan. It's going to be tested once again, but we really shouldn't be surprised at District 12, 6A, what it has to offer as far as, just nightly and weekly matchups, where any team, if you lay a clunker, you're going to be in trouble.
You're going to pay for it, yeah, for sure.
So Temple, takes a 2-0 record into Leo Buckley Stadium against Heights, and will be, like I said, tested again. Just a couple notes as far as Temple's offense goes. That's another unit that's continuing just to kind of make these steady steps forward. Samari Howard, the running back, he's at 568 yards rushing, but he's also had 3 receiving touchdowns over the last 2 games and kind of become another weapon for quarterback Umberto Arizmendi, who's got a bunch of receivers to throw to, and they've all done exceptionally well. AJ McDuffie, Tredarius Taylor, Luke Allen.
Kind of the
Michael
rich,
Harrison Pilot,
the rich getting richer.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And the offensive line is, again, showing those steady improvements for Scott Stewart and the Wildcats. And, playing on a Thursday at Leo Buckley, it kind of changes things up a little bit as far as routine. Stewart said there's really not much to do other than tweak a few things in practice during the week, move some stuff up, move some stuff back. But other than that, it's game week as usual, just a day earlier.
Yeah, just kind of play the team in front of you.
Yeah, and you had Belton had a Thursday game 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, yeah, to open district. Yeah.
So that's just one of those things. Every team usually has at least one. Temple has 2 this year, and this is the first one. So with that, let's go over to the other District 12 6A game in our area, Belton at Bryan. And just real quick, Belton also 2-0. With Temple and Clean Shoemaker, also 2-0. Those are the 3 teams still unblemished.
Right.
District 12 6A.
And if you kind of see the way the Tigers started out the season, with 3 straight losses in non-district play, the leaps, more like the bounds that they have made since that time really has just been, pretty exceptional. They're coming off a 26-14 win at home against Coppers Cove last week. That game could have easily been a lot more in Belton's favor as far as the score is concerned. They score a couple of touchdowns there in the first half, make it 14-0, and then really they're down at the Coppers Cove 10-yard line with I think less than 2 minutes to go in the first half. Really looking for a 21-0 lead. Didn't really work out. Coach Sniffen over there kind of took the blame for that. He said, just got a little too fancy, a little too, as he said, cute with the play calling. So, he took full responsibility for that. So they don't get the touchdown, and then, Coppers Cove goes 90 yards in about 31 seconds to make it 14-7 at halftime. So really kind of not the way you want to end that half if you're Belton, obviously, especially considering you just had a really good, solid performance versus Killeen for your first win of the season. But they bounced back and really kind of proved that they can be a consistent team and they can get it done for a full game. They start that second half with a 16 play drive that ends in a touchdown to go up 20-7. Immediately they force Coppers Cove to punt, and then they take the ball right back and keep going with the momentum for a 68-yard touchdown pass from Ruben Jimenez to Kanan Utley, who's really kind of stepped up and been that top receiver for Belton this season. So 26-7 at that point. Coppers Cove adds on another touchdown late there, but the game is pretty much Belton's at that point. So pretty much at this point in the season, Belton's really starting to hit its stride. They're really showing improvement, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which was the coaching staff's main emphasis to start this season. So, you've got moving forward, Belton's got to continue to improve on the mental mistakes and the self-inflicted errors that often puts them in a hole. A lot of times it's not really their opponents that are putting them in bad situations, which is what's kind of mind-boggling if you're Belton, really kind of, frustrating that a lot of your mistakes are coming from your own side. But, they continue to clean that up. They're going to want to do that again this week at Bryan. They want the defense to continue to play well. Each week, they're allowing fewer and fewer points. They started off giving up 36, then they gave up 35, back-to-back weeks of 26 points allowed, and then Coppers Cove, they allowed a season-low 14, so that defense is definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, the 40 points Belton has given up in the two district games combined, 20-point average. That's the second least in the district behind Temple and right ahead of Shoemaker, and that's That's definitely, like you said, a good start for the Tigers defense and just keeping it to a minimum, because that offense has the potential to score.
Oh yeah, and on offense, they're not really trying to keep anything a secret. It's a lot of ground and pound. They're gonna get behind that offensive line. They're gonna put their top running backs back there. Maurice Reed, quarterback Ruben Jimenez, whenever they want him to run the ball. And right now, things are working out good for them. They're averaging just under 227 yards rushing per game. And then, just another note on the defense, they're allowing for the season 27.4 points per game, 307.8 yards per game. So definitely trending in the right direction. You got to be happy if you're a Belton fan. Bryan didn't put up great numbers, not a great performance against a really good Temple team, but at the same time, you're going down there to Merrill Green. This is kind of another road district test. You're traveling a little further than you did when you played over at Leo Buckley a couple of weeks ago. So it'll be interesting to see how the Tigers handle being on the road, and just, see how they do as far as trying to be 3-0. But 3-0 or 2-1, Coach Sniffen made it clear that, obviously they want the win, but, whatever happens, that's not going to change their approach as they continue their district grind.
Yeah, you mentioned going on the road there to Merrill Green. Coach Stewart at Temple, he mentioned how that's a tough venue to play. Mm-hmm. When we were kind of looking at the Harker Heights Bryan game over there a couple weeks ago, he was a bit surprised at that result, just based on the skill set that Harker Heights has, but going on the road in that venue, he mentioned that place is always tough to play. I mean, you've probably seen more games than I have over there, Marcus, but I've only seen that soccer game actually. But
games,
yeah, it's definitely kind of one of those home field advantage venues for sure.
It does kind of feel that way. I mean, Yeah, it is obviously football in Central Texas. The Bryan fans kind of get into it. It's a good stadium to go cover a game. I mean, it's a nice facility.
Yep.
Yeah, and Brian, they still got Ross Rogers down there, 35-year head coach there. So he's definitely gonna try to expose some things the Tigers do. And then the Vikings, they got a kind of a dual threat quarterback. Josh, you got to see him in action. They also have a running back, Taysom DeVault, a good wide receiver in Hunter Vivaldi. So they like to run the option from what I've heard.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely it's an interesting offense. You could see how it would give opposing defenses some fits if it's executed properly. They had a little bit of had some trouble with that option last week against Temple, and it just didn't really getting in a rhythm. But you can tell if it does, it can create some problems for sure.
Right.
Belton, that's another test for sure for the Tigers defense going up against one of those kind of creative rushing attacks. And speaking of that, Salato's got one of those.
That's what I keep hearing, yeah.
Creative rushing attacks. But the Eagles can wrap up that outright district championship with a victory Friday night and also get that number 1 seed. But, at the bottom, well, I shouldn't say at the bottom, in the vying for that last playoff spot, Gatesville and Gerald, they're in this position because they both beat Robinson,
Right.
Which has struggled this year, and this is the final day of the regular season in that district.
I should point out that Salado actually, they've claimed the top seed. They're going to be the number 1 seed in the playoffs because this is the last week for that district play.
Yeah, I was reading your notes at the top of this. That's why.
Yeah. Salado claims top seed.
Yeah.
And then the winner of the Gerald, like you said, go ahead and talk about that game a little bit more if you want. Gerald Gatesville.
Yeah. No. I mean, I would. We were talking about it earlier. Gatesville and Gerald, 2 teams that have shown bright spots in certain areas all year. Victories have been a bit difficult to come by. Gatesville 2-5 overall. They've had some games canceled because of COVID, and Gerald 1-8 this year. But those things go out the window when you have a playoff spot up for grabs.
Yeah, there's. Obviously, there's a lot of people in the state that still feel like 4 teams in the playoffs from a district is too many. But when you look at it, you come down to the final week of the season and 2 teams have something to play for, where both these teams could have just packed it up 3 weeks ago. Otherwise, had they not, it's one of those things where it gives some of these teams something to play for, even if they don't advance far in the playoffs. That extra week that you can play. Especially these. I know Gerald's a pretty young team. Gatesville kind of been rebuilding the last couple of years, still have some youth out there. So an extra game in the playoff, even if it's just 1 week, would help them both. And it'll be fun to watch that one, see the outcome between Gerald and Gatesville.
Just getting some kind of playoff experience there, building towards the future. And, this year, maybe not as many fans that can go see those games, but also just gives the community as a whole just another reason to enjoy some fall football. Weather gets cooler like we've seen, so who doesn't love that?
And we've mentioned a handful of their players all year. They each have a running back in the top 10 rushing in the area with Derek Warren at Gerald has more than 1,100 yards rushing, and Jason DeLong has almost 700. And they've had some receivers as well, put up some big numbers. So, it's going to be a good game. I think it's definitely a toss-up. That's probably the easy way to put it, or kind of the cop-out way. But, Gatesville being at home, speaking of venues, that's a good one to play in and home field advantage there. So pretty exciting for those 2 teams. Salato's just looking to keep that engine moving along, going up against Robinson.
Yeah, Salado doesn't care at all. Gerald and Gatesville right now.
No.
We've already played them. We're focusing on what's ahead of us.
Right. And, moving down to 11-3A1, you got some notes up here, Marcus. I don't know if you wanted to go through some of the stuff that could happen this week.
I'll just try and explain it. Rockdale, right now there's a 3-way tie for first place between Rockdale, Troy, and Lorena, all at 3-1. However, Rockdale technically is the only team that has clinched the playoff spot because of all the tiebreakers. They have beaten everybody they can end up in a tie with by 15 points or more. So that would give them the edge in all 3-way, 4-way tiebreakers at this point, which it could still happen where that tiebreaker may just put them in the final spot in the playoffs, but they're in. And everybody else is still kind of playing for their life. Troy, if they beat Rockdale this week, they earn a berth. A few other things that are kind of complicated could still give some teams some berths. And Cameron Yo is playing McGregor, and if the Yeomen lose this one, they cannot make the playoffs, and that would end like I believe a 10-year string for them.
Yeah.
Of making the playoffs. So
Man, Cameron not in the playoffs? That's a weird thing to...
So they're going to be coming out and really ready to beat McGregor, and even if they win that, there's still no guarantee for them at this point, but it is kind of a weird district where, I mean, we've talked about it all year, just all these teams, 3 teams at 3-1, McGregor at 2-2, Cameron Yo and Academy at 2-3, and Caldwell at 0-4. And really, between Cameron Yo and Academy, Yo is kind of in the better position to get in the playoffs than Academy. And Caldwell has been eliminated from postseason contention as well. But, as we saw last week, they gave Troy kind of fits in that 21-6 game. And
Yeah, Troy without running back Zach Urbachik in that one, the area's leading rusher. And, we have yet to receive any notice if he'll be back in action this Friday for the Rockdale game. So that obviously is a major factor in that one going forward.
Huge, yeah.
But yeah, like you're saying, Marcus, we're seeing it play out kind of how we figured is there's going to be a couple really good teams,
right,
not in the playoffs this year in that district.
And one thing, you hate to look back at it and realize you're 3-1, but with Troy, some of those 1-point games, they had the 1-point loss to McGregor, 1-point win over Cameron Yo. Just because it's 1 point, that could actually end up hurting them, even though one of them's a win, one's a loss. It's like the loss doesn't hurt as much as a 1-point win, and that kind of is backwards in a way. But when it comes to tiebreakers, that's what you think about. It's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't know all of the matchups for the season finale a week from now in that district. I know Academy and Troy play. I'm pretty sure that's one of them, which is, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
I meant to bring all that.
Yeah.
Just because it would help explain a few things.
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, we have another week of this podcast, obviously, that we can continue on with. But, Rockdale Troy, obviously, like we said, is massive. And Yo McGregor, McGregor's offense has been pretty lethal this season. And Yo's defense actually hasn't been all that terrible. I think it's just like Daniel was saying with some of Belton's, self-inflicted things. I feel like Yo's kind of run into some of those things as well this season. So if they can minimize those, get themselves back in that playoff mix and keep that streak going.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun week in that district. Then really next week may be a fun week too, but we could be here still talking about playoff possibilities, or we could say, here's the 4 teams that are playoff bound for that district.
Right.
Just depending on how this week turns out.
Any other for sure's going into this week and, maybe simple
Well, let's start with the
stuff in other districts, yeah.
Granger's in District 13, 2A2, and I want to say they've got the top seed locked up in that district. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Holland, they're going to be in with a win. Really, the worst they can do is kind of tie for a final playoff spot at this point. And so they're likely in either way. And the other district that kind of has, going back to Granger, we know Bartlett lost tonight, so that kind of leaves them out of the playoff hunt.
Okay.
Moody in District 12 2A, even though they're 0-4, they could actually win out, get some help, and make the playoffs. Just because it's kind of the way things kind of shape up. They need a lot of help, but they've got to, they got to beat Thrall this week, and I think next week they play Hearn.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, you get that chance. Again, you got something to play for.
That's all you need.
But the thing is, they have Thrall this week, and they have undefeated Hearn next week. So,
still a chance regardless.
But the more interesting one, 13-3A2, Rogers is idle this week. And sometimes it's easier to talk about ways a team cannot make the playoffs than it is to actually get them in. Because Rogers is essentially, for all intents and purposes, has a playoff spot locked up. But if somehow Lexington, who is playing Buffalo, which is 7-1, if Lexington can happen to beat Buffalo by 11 points and Clifton can beat district leader Franklin, then Rogers has to wait till next week to see what happens. And then Rogers, all they have to do is win. Or if they lose, then they can still get in if Buffalo wins. And Buffalo, I believe, next week is playing last place Riesel. But if Riesel happens to beat Buffalo, then we create a little bit more.
Right.
It's basically, for Rogers, there's a better chance that, like, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi becomes president this week, then Rogers does not make the playoffs.
Ooh.
I don't see Pelosi becoming president. I don't see Rogers not making the playoffs because so much has to happen, and some of it is like so ridiculous.
Well, and they have an extra week to prepare for winless Florence as well. That's
Right.
But Rogers plays. And
It's just one of those things because of COVID. You mentioned this stuff just because,
You have no idea.
Lexington could win by forfeit. Buffalo might have to forfeit. Franklin might have to forfeit to Clifton. And then Rogers is going, uh-oh, we might be in trouble.
right.
You never know. But
Right.
I'm gonna go ahead and say Rogers is in the playoffs. But pretty much, I think after this week, there's going to be a lot more X's by some of these teams that have clinched playoff spots.
Right.
This week's just going to be fun to see how it plays out, really.
Definitely. I agree.
And then Buckholz in the 6-man district, because Mount Calm has pretty much forfeited their season, kind of, sort of. Buckholz really needs to beat Oglesby. They lost to Dimebacks last week, so they're kind of playing to keep their playoff hope alive. Because if it's true that Mount Calm has forfeited the season, then that's a win for Buckholz. But they're playing Oglesby this week. Oglesby is 7-1, so Buckholz could be done after this week as well. This could be their last game.
But, I mean, Buckholz has shown some improvement this season with new coach out there. So, something to build on, I guess, even if their season unofficially sort of kind of comes to a close.
Right, you never know what's
Right,
going to happen.
right. I think that's actually about all we have for this week as far as scenarios go.
Hopefully
Yeah.
we made that clear as mud for everyone out there. But
Yeah, there are some more complicated scenarios, but if I got into them, y'all would fall asleep on me and just be more confused. I mean, even the Rogers one was kind of a little bit complicated, but
I'm just still fascinating or something to think that, our two big schools that we cover are at the midway point of their season, and
Yep.
our smaller schools are nearing the playoffs, like in 2 weeks. I mean, the playoffs, first round of playoffs.
I'm just glad we're still at this point. I mean,
Yeah,
everything
3 weeks, I guess, but
everything that happened over the summer, and just at any point you never know. But the fact that we're almost to the playoffs for the smaller schools, and there's a lot of district left for the 5A, 6A.
yeah,
I'm just happy to be here.
right.
yeah, we're gonna be looking at some playoff matchups and be thinking about possibly a Belton Temple matchup for the district.
Yeah,
Lead.
the week of November 13th is the first by-district round of the lower classification playoffs, which is also Temple Belton
Right.
week. And there is a chance that those two teams go into that game 4-0
Yeah.
in district.
Yeah, they're on the right path right now.
Yeah,
I'm
so
not trying to jinx either one of them,
No.
but
Yeah, Belton has Bryan this week, and then Harker Heights the week after before Temple. And let's see, Temple's got Harker Heights this week, and then what? Who's next? Who's next for them?
you got me, man.
This is we're not there.
Yeah, we don't come here prepared, Daniel. We're just like, what?
We're not thinking. We're taking it 1 week at a time. The only reason I knew is because I had the schedule with me. So
I mean, this podcast might be forfeited because of COVID. So
you never know. we can only
We don't
hope.
even need COVID to forfeit it. I mean, I could just throw my microphone against the wall and it would be over. Although I wouldn't do that because then I'd have to pay Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel has
big
nice-
big time bucks.
I think he said he got it at the dollar store for like 99 cents. I don't know.
It was maybe $1.99. So come on,
Something
man.
like that.
Respect the process. So
No,
You can go over the stats if you want, Daniel, right now, too.
let's
I
see.
was gonna.
Want to go over some stats? Let's see. Alrighty. Well, we will look at some stats for the Class 1A through 4A area leaders. So, leading off for your area rushers, Zach Robotchik out of Troy. Again, not sure if he's going to play this week for the Trojans. We'll just have to see what happens. But he leads the area handedly with 2,010 yards rushing and 32 touchdowns on the season. Noah Mesher from Salado comes in next with 1,267 yards, 17 touchdowns. Derek Warren out of Gerald with 1,128 yards, 10 touchdowns. Cameron Valdez out of Rockdale with 1,056 yards, 17 touchdowns on the season. And rounding out your top five is Salado's Reed Vincent with just under 1,000 yards with 989 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns on the season.
Temple hosts Colleen Ellison the week before playing Belton.
There you go. See, you just had to.
Suspense.
The suspense is killing us. I don't know. There's a lot of things killing us right now at this point. All right, moving on to your top passers in the area. Jerry Cephas from Academy. He's got 1,431 yards passing on the season with 15 touchdowns. Zane Zeinert out of Cameron Yo, 1,321 yards, 16 touchdowns. Kobe Mitchell, the dual threat quarterback from Rockdale, with 1,233 yards passing, 15 touchdowns. Connor Cruz leading the Lake Belton Broncos with 1,054 yards passing and 18 touchdowns. And then Luke Mullins rounds out the top five from Gatesville with 1,003 yards passing and 11 touchdowns on the season. So a lot of 1,000-yard passers on the season. Still got a few games left, so we'll see where those numbers end up.
Yes, we will.
We
Will.
Great job, guys. And
What about our people that are catching all those passes, Daniel?
you know what, Marcus? I thought you would never ask, so I'm going to read off those guys. Your area yards receiving leaders, you've got Jalen McWilliams out of Academy with 734 yards receiving, 11 touchdowns. Zachorian Spikes out of Cameron Yo is next with 574 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. Keyshawn Raven out of Rockdale with 541 yards, 10 touchdowns. Jordan Landrum from Rosebud Lot with 470 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. Anthony Dansby out of Rockdale with 465 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. And then from Academy, Jaden Simmons just falls under him with 463 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns on the year. Josh, you want to tell us how the 6A and
Yeah, sure.
small schools, or TAPS, excuse me.
Temple's offense, 404.2 yards per game. Belton 393 so far this season. CTCS 391. As far as defense goes, Central Texas Christian's defense is allowing just 207.8 yards per game. Temple 271.8, and as you mentioned earlier, 307.8 for Belton. 0.8. Leading rusher among our 6A and TAPS players, Ryan Turley out of CTCS, 81 carries, 888 yards, 17 touchdowns. Maurice,
He's having a heck of a year.
not bad. Maurice Reed out of Belton, 140 carries, 671 yards, 3 touchdowns. Samari Howard out of Temple, 92 for 568 and 8 touchdowns. And at Holy Trinity, Zaylen Blackwood, 288 yards rushing and 6 touchdowns. Some of those top rushing dudes.
What about the guys throwing the ball, though? How does...
Oh, I thought you'd never ask.
I thought, how about that?
Yeah, Humberto Arizmendi out of Temple, 73 of 112 for 987 yards. He has 14 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Ruben Jimenez out of Belton, 49 of 94, 743, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Alec Gonzalez, CTCS, 41 of 63, 651 yards, 7 touchdowns, and you guessed it, 4 interceptions.
4 just sounded right. That's
Yeah.
why I guessed it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And Jace Martin, Holy Trinity, 39 of 63, 470 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
not bad for his first season at quarterback for the Celtics.
Yes.
So
You are correct. That is not bad at all. Reception wise, Kanan Utley out of Belton, 24. Michael Harrison Pilot out of Temple, 19. Brian Henry from Belton, 18. AJ McDuffie and Samari Howard out of Temple, 15 apiece. Kanan Utley also leads our 6A schools with 314 yards receiving. AJ McDuffie, 275. Brian Henry, 264. Connor Ling out of CTCS, 254. The most receiving touchdowns out of our TAPS and 6A schools, Patrick McKenna out of Holy Trinity has 5.
way to go, Patrick.
And way to go to you for listening to this podcast for the duration,
And I'll just
Mom.
I'll just say, any area coaches or otherwise, if you heard me say something about playoff scenarios and you don't think it was right, feel free to email me, call me, text me. I know a lot of you have my number. That's kind of scary. And I'll get it right. Let me know, because I have been known to make mistakes on these things before when I haven't thoroughly looked at it. It's been about 15 years since I made a mistake on these, but
Yeah.
it happens.
You're probably due. And I think
Yeah.
we actually paint your home address on the side of the Temple Telegram building? Just if people really want to get in contact with you, they can just show up on your front door.
They could, but nobody would really want to do that. You'd have to travel to, West Bell County. And
Who wants to do that?
I don't even want to do that half the time.
Oh man.
I like how you said West Bell County. It's like be as vague as possible for like the little bit of West Bell County that there is.
Right. It could be just West Belton. It could be Nolanville. It could be Harker Heights. It could be Killeen. It could be, Kipner's down in Bell County.
Oh man, you're really getting out there now.
Or it could just be confusing people. Maybe I live in East Bell County. Maybe I live in Little River Academy. I don't, but. Oh, this is fun.
Keep going, Marcus.
Let's all pretend that we don't have cots here at the Telegram where we're just sleeping until our next shift starts.
Yeah, nobody's listening to us anymore at this point. It's like, I don't care where Marcus lives. Just end the podcast.
Oh, man.
I don't care about his groceries. I don't care about any of this stuff.
But we do care about playoff scenarios, so that's what we care about.
Yep, you heard him. End the podcast.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.